Is your borderline X, is she a pure borderline? Or is she a narcissist? Or is there such a thing as this hybrid borderline with narcissistic tendencies, also known as comorbid NPD? Does such a thing exist? Is the borderline just somebody who's really damaged, doesn't want to hurt you, but because she's in so much pain and so afraid, she lashes out at you like a caged, injured animal? Or is she this grandiose, fully aware, psychopathic narcissist who has no feelings whatsoever and she completely wants to destroy you? It's incredibly important that you understand why you view your borderline in one of these two categories or the third, and why there's so much confusion about this third comorbid category. Hi, my name is Mike. This is the One Thing That Heals BPD and NPD Abuse channel, and I talk about how I healed from the absolutely horrific pain. I haven't felt anything that came anywhere near close to the amount of just mind-numbing, soul-eating pain that I experienced with my borderline ex, who looked actually a lot like that. I have a book here, How I Survived My Borderline Girlfriend, which you can find on Amazon, Kindle, or Audible. I suggest the audiobook. And you can find all of my audiobooks, by the way, at audiobooks.thunderwizard.com. All right, so which one of these? You got three choices. Door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3. Was she a pure borderline, meaning that she had all of these vulnerable feelings and she had lots of love and compassion, but she just had this hair trigger? Was she a full-on psychopath, grandiose narcissist who had no feelings and planned out your demise? Or was she this hybrid, this borderline comorbid NPD? It's extremely important you understand your choice. And the choice that you want to make tells me everything about where you are in your state of recovery from this. So I'm going to tell you that there's only one understanding that is useful to you in your recovery. I'm here to tell you that, this distinction between borderline personality disorder versus narcissistic personality disorder is nonsense. I'm not saying that psychologists don't talk about it, but psychologists, are really good at spouting what comes out in books. And whatever that thing that comes out every year that tells psychologists what to believe and what the diagnosis are, they're changing their minds all the time. Don't get me wrong. I have a great respect for psychology and psychologists. I have a psychologist that I see, and I listen to the opinions of the respected psychologists, and the ones that I respect actually are the ones that are saying, maybe not outright, but they're saying that this is nonsense, this idea that there's a difference between the borderline and the narcissist, and that there's this thing called comorbid. So why does it not make a difference? Because you don't realize it as a codependent or as a survivor, a partner of somebody who suffers from a personality disorder. You don't realize that you are doing something very similar that the borderline is. You are projecting your mindset onto them. And not only are you projecting your mindset onto them, you can't help but do it, because if you don't project your mindset onto them, you might die. So in other videos, I've explained to you that what causes BPD and NPD is exactly the same. So it doesn't make any sense to make these two different, seemingly totally divergent diagnoses if the cause is exactly the same. If the cause is exactly the same, it means it's the exact same mental illness, and it is expressing itself in two different ways. or seemingly two different ways. I think it's nonsense. It is true that even though the cause of BPD and NPD is the same, which is that at an infantile stage they were neglected, abandoned, abused, confused, and it was so traumatic on them that they almost died from it. And in order to survive, they had to create a fantasy where they were perfect, that they were perfect and lovable. And that is a psychosis. The difference between psychosis and neurosis. A neurosis is what you have because you're with them. You can't be with them and not be neurotic. A neurosis is you know what objective reality is, but you really struggle against it. And it really gives you a lot of anxiety. It makes you incredibly uncomfortable. You wish that you could create a psychotic fantasy, but you can't. Objective reality keeps smacking you in the face, and you struggle with this cognitive dissonance of knowing what the truth is, but desperately wanting something that's not real to be real. That's your dilemma. And so because you have this cognitive dissonance, which is much more than confusion, it is a state of extreme trauma. It means that you want so desperately for your borderline girlfriend to be able to love you. In fact, you need it. She did this to you, not consciously, just the dynamic did, because she triggered in you your unresolved need for your mother's complete and total unconditional love. It is a need that we have. As infants, if we don't get it, we will die. If we get a certain amount of it, but not enough to give us any identity, then you end up as a borderline and or narcissist. You have no identity, and you feel so shameful about your existence. You have to create this false identity, this psychotic fantasy in order to survive, because reality will kill you. And the reality is you're not, and you're based on your mother's and your parents' behavior, you're not worthy to exist. That's why 10% of borderlines kill themselves, because they have this program in them that says that I'm not worthy to exist. So I have to create a fantasy where I am the perfect partner. That's her psychotic fantasy. The narcissist creates a different fantasy. And it's the same thing. They create themselves to be perfect, and it's so that they will feel lovable and have value and relevance so that they won't deserve to die. The narcissist, it has a firmer psychotic delusion that has a greater firewall. The borderline is permeable. And the reason why the borderline's firewall is permeable, better ways to look at it is it's not permeable, it's flexible. And this is why I refer to borderlines as women, because the personality disorder strategy of survival that they have is feminine. Whereas masculine, guys, I'm a wannabe tough guy myself. The testosterone makes you invulnerable. You don't seek, you can't make mistakes. If you're on the battlefield, you don't have time for feelings because there's a battle to be won. And so the narcissist creates this invulnerable firewall surrounding their fantasy, which should be their identity. Since they don't have an identity, they have a false fantasy identity. And so the borderline is more malleable. But it doesn't change the fact that their fantasy is still immovable. Their fantasy never goes away. So they look, and you experience them as being more vulnerable. But that vulnerability is deceptive. They're not vulnerable. They're not accessible. But they are more malleable. And so it won't kill them to have feelings. Whereas for the narcissist, if the narcissist shows feelings, it might kill them. So, your need to see your borderline as just borderline and not narcissist means that you want to believe that they have a rational interaction with their vulnerable feelings in the same way that you do. You and I, we don't have personality disorders. If we get into some kind of a fight or some kind of something goes on and one of us realizes that we were mistaken, we will go, I make sure that I do this. Whenever I become aware that I have been in the wrong, I will go and I will say to the person, listen, I did this and this and this to you, and you didn't deserve that. I was wrong. Please forgive me. Now, I don't have shame about that. It's okay for me to be human. But because I have acknowledged what I did wrong, it means I'm not going to do it again. Or at the very least, I'm going to put all of my effort to make sure that I don't do it again. And if I slip, I will improve. You can bet that my behavior will improve over time because I have come to you with my vulnerable feelings about, hey, I wronged you and I was in this kind of a state, but that's not your problem. Please forgive me. You know that I'm going to improve. The borderline, because they have this malleable way of dealing with things, it gives off the impression that they have the same kind of rational understanding about their negative feelings as you do. So when they cry or when they apologize, when they hoover you and they come back, and again, if you listen, you'll find out they never really truly apologize. What they really say when they come back is that I've realized that you can give me what I want. But they might apologize, and they might even reveal to you deeply vulnerable feelings. I was so afraid that you were going to abandon me, that what I did was this, and I was so this, and it was that, and I got triggered, and I know that it was wrong. And they may even have tears in their eyes. They may even feel compassion for you. You have to understand, being a sociopath does not mean you don't have feelings. It means that you can't live up to them. It means that you can walk away from those feelings at the drop of a hat. Borderlines are absolutely masters of switching off that compassion when it suits them. I can't do that. If I do that, it's hurtful to me. I can't turn off my compassion. If I care about somebody, I can't just decide I don't care about them anymore. The borderline can do that. What does that mean? It means she's a sociopath. It means that it means that her compassion isn't going to be fulfilled in objective reality. It means that it means that the intensity of her feelings in the moment is meaningless in the long run. It means that when she does decide to flip off that compassion and lets out the inner psychopath and abuses you, devalues you, and discards you, there is no difference between the borderline who is filled with compassion 90% of the time, but then discards you forever. There's no difference between that and the so-called grandiose narcissist who knows from the beginning, I'm going to lie to this person and I'm going to make them feel loved and then I'm going to throw them away. It doesn't matter if they know ahead of time and they know throughout the whole time that they're abusing you that they're planning on destroying you. The fact that the borderline destroys you in exactly the same way and never comes back and never fixes it and never loves you, the fact that she does that and had a bunch of feelings doesn't somehow make it less or better. It's identical. These are two different strategies of avoiding what's called narcissistic mortification. So this idea that there is this comorbid NPD is nonsense. I don't care what's in the DSM. The DSM changes every year. I don't care what some psychologists say. A lot of these psychologists have never been in a relationship with a borderline. They may have been with them in therapy. They may have read about it. I watched a video. I mean, I could give you a link. I think I did in a previous video where a psychologist and I don't know who this guy was, a life coach, or I don't know what he was. And they were sitting around talking about how people stigmatize people with borderline personality disorder. And they were musing about, well, the thing is, I mean, I wouldn't get mad at my grandmother who was senile, and if she got snapped at me and forgot who I was, I mean, I wouldn't get mad at her for that. She can't help it. She's old and she's senile. So if I was with a borderline and they split on me, I would know. I'd like to believe that I know ahead of time that, they can't help it. But the assumption is that the borderline's going to snap back and be okay. That the borderline just had, gas. Oh, well, sorry, I split. Is there a complete, total misunderstanding? I don't give a crap if this person was a psychologist. This person has no idea what it's like to be with a borderline. If they think that all that it takes is just, tolerating them having a bad day and then they'll be fine tomorrow. The idea that we that have been with them didn't do that exact same thing, that somehow that very simple solution somehow didn't dawn on us, those that need to make this relationship work. So psychologists and the DSM can be full of crap. It's constantly changing. I'm sitting here giving you permission to follow your instincts that tell you there's no difference here. So here's how I know that you haven't been recovered, that you haven't done the one thing that I talk about in my book and that I talk about on this channel. You will be in one of these three places. You will either say to yourself, well, my borderline isn't a narcissist. She's just in a lot of pain. And you'll be denying the fact that she's devalued you and discarded you and used you and manipulated you. And you will make excuses because you have a desperate need to be loved by mom or you will die. And so you have to see her as redeemable. Or you have come to the realization after she discarded you and you waited and waited to be hoovered back and she didn't hoover you back and she got together with her ex-narcissist boyfriend or some new narcissist boyfriend and she's now on Facebook and she's getting married and she now is pregnant with his kid, and then you become full of rage and you become absolutely, understandably and rightfully so, full of rage. But now you realize that, that's the wrong one. Now you realize that she was a grandiose psychopath narcissist who was planning it this whole time. She lied to me from the beginning. And then you'll come onto my channel and self-righteously throw out comments that say they know exactly what they're doing. They're doing it on purpose. You keep making excuses for them. And here's the thing, both of you, whether you are making excuses, because I don't make excuses for them. Just because I tell you they can't help it and they have a mental illness is not making excuses for them in the slightest. They're still completely responsible for their damage. But you are both in the same place. If you make excuses for them, you justify it because you have hope that she will love you. Now, what you don't realize, if you see her as the one on the right, the grandiose narcissist who's out to completely destroy you, who did it on purpose, who's a criminal and deserves to be thrown in jail. Those of you who want to see their borderline as NPD or comorbid NPD, and you realize now that she doesn't have any compassion and that she's a sociopath, you still love your borderline. You still want her to love you. Otherwise, you wouldn't be angry. Your anger is coming from you want her to apologize. You want justice. When you want justice, it means you want her to do what I do when I realize I've done something wrong. You want her to go, you know what? I realize that what I did was hurtful to you and you didn't deserve that, and I'm not going to do that to you again. Come back and I promise I will love you. That's what you want them to do. Your rage doesn't protect you. Your rage doesn't mean that you've somehow become aware. You're not aware of anything. You are a infant having a temper tantrum. Mommy, come fix me. I will die without you. I am now full of rage that you're not doing what I want. Mommy, I'm going to die if you don't love me. So whether or not I don't think there is, because as you know, borderline personality disorder and narcissistic personality disorder are the same disorder. They're two sides of the same coin. They're two different strategies. One is a feminine strategy where you paint your psychotic fantasy onto 3D and you hire people, stick figures as actors to be painted by you and then to be the God that regulates all of your feelings and makes you okay. And when they don't, you get furious, or if they do, you get furious. That's the borderlines way, a strategy with their psychopathy, with their psychosis. The narcissist strategy is, I'm going to keep my fantasy internal. The external reality doesn't matter to me. It is a black and white cartoon. It's not real, but I'm going to take the stick figures that are in that cartoon and I'm going to put them into my color-filled narcissistic fantasy, and I'm going to be God and I'm going to make you worship me. But it comes from the exact same place, and it means that both of them, the borderline and the narcissist, both are sociopaths. A sociopath is not somebody who doesn't have feelings. A sociopath is somebody who doesn't understand the consequences of their actions. Because it's convenient for you to have loving feelings and act in a loving way, the moment you turn it off and you act psychopathically and don't fix that, you're a sociopath. In fact, you're worse in terms of the damage that is caused. It is worse than the narcissist, because the narcissist can say, yeah, but I never loved you to begin with. The borderline loved you, and now she doesn't. Which is worse? It's sociopathic. So let's get rid of this nonsense. Please don't annoy me with these comments about, I wonder if my borderline was a covert narcissist. By the way, borderline personality disorder has been described by psychologists as covert narcissism, vulnerable narcissism. And this idea that there's a comorbidity is nonsense. There's just borderlines who are quiet and rage inward, but still do all horrible things. They just don't yell at you, throw things, and slash your tires, or yell at you in public. And then there's the borderline that acts more grandiosely and screams and yells and slashes your tires. It's just, one is having a different kind of temper tantrum, but it's the exact same thing. And it has the exact same damaging impacts. But the ones that are quiet are a little more confusing because it's easier for us to delude ourselves and project onto them a rationality they don't have. All right, so that's it. I hope that helps. And if you want to heal, go get my book, How I Survived My Borderline Girlfriend. Follow my instructions to the letter. They're simple, won't cost you a dime. You can do it from home, or you can look for it on the channel. I put it on the channel more times than I can count. And if you do what I suggest, I guarantee you, if you do it fully and completely, I guarantee you, you will be completely healed of the pain of that relationship, and you will be able to have healthy relationships again with other people. You'll still be human, you'll still have mommy issues, but you'll be able to separate it and keep it where it belongs as an intrapsychic issue, as opposed to giving it away to somebody else who's supposed to take care of it for you. All right, that's it. I wish you all the best. I will see you all very soon.